I got to tell you, this is an incredible honor. Imagine Progressive Soup having Marv Alpert on the show. I'm going to tell you, this is really fantastic. Kick save, and it's a beauty.
Marv Albert?
Yeah. Well, oh, okay, hold on now. How about, yes, and it counts.
I remember that. But
Wait. How about score?
I'm not scoring too well here. I'm not Marv Albert.
Oh my gosh. Hey, wasn't this supposed to be the night we had Marv Alpert on? Oh. Mark Albertson.
That's it.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Well, how about that? We have, this is Progressive Soup. I'm David Stevenson. We have tonight as a guest Mark Albertson. And the reason why we were talking about sports, maybe, is that we're going to talk about history. The importance of history, the importance of learning about history, how history is kind of overlooked, not just in our schools, but by people in general. And yet at the same time, we have, everybody seems to be so geared up on sports trivia. I mean, people can tell us these score and all these other phrases and everything, and yet we don't know as a nation, not just our kids, but our adults, we don't know as a nation about the important lessons of history.
Well, they can tell you the last two years worth of guests on American Idol if they really want to.
Probably that too.
Speaker of the House or something like that.
Probably that true, but probably you're right. Probably couldn't name the Speaker of the House, the one with the big wide eyes that didn't seem to know how to blink and was very easy to parody.
Right.
But I think she was a great Speaker of the House. But at any rate, that's beside the point. But why learn history? What's the importance of history?
Well, one of the major criteria for learning history is that so you don't repeat the mistakes of those who came before you. You know, we do not seem to. It's not only learning history in this country, and part of it's some of it's the education system. I think some of it's societal.
Yeah.
You know, it seems that nowadays, I mean, the avenues of acquiring information, the last 20, 25 years has exploded. iPods, internet, so on and so forth. Yet it seems the American public is less informed than it was 20, 25 years ago.
Yeah.
A case in point is the reason I wrote my third book on history is because of the fact that I had talked to two graduates of one of my local high schools about 5 years ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, 2005, 5.5 years ago.
Wow.
And these two graduates told me that the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki occurred before the attack on Pearl Harbor.
Well, we all know that they happened on September 11th, didn't they?
But you know, it's interesting. I told my father about those two conversations because my father was a Navy radio man in World War II.
Yeah.
And he went to Nagasaki. That was the last thing he did in World War II. His ship went to Nagasaki. He was on the USS Ottawa. It was an attack transport carrying Marines, and they were going to occupy what was left of the city, which there wasn't much left.
Right.
And I told him that story, and he kind of laughed, and I said, well, I don't see what's so funny. I didn't go to Nagasaki. I don't think it's funny. He says, no, you don't understand. He says, I just had a thought. I says, well, you want to share that thought? He goes, sure. He says, maybe the Norfolk Board of Ed are using Japanese history books where you read from right to left, so that counts for the kids' confusion. So, but, you know, I mean, leave it to my father to come up with stuff like that.
That's pretty
but
wild.
The point is, yeah, if you do your research, you find that a lot of our young are not getting it. For example, in 2005, UConn, University of Connecticut, did a poll. And they polled 100...
Go Huskies! Oh, sorry, go ahead.
And they polled 112,003 high school students across the country. They found, and this was the understanding, these high school students and their understanding of First Amendment rights. We were talking about the Constitution before.
Sure.
It seems that 36% of those polled thought that writers and journalists should get government clearance before filing their stories. In 2006, National Geographic did a poll with 18 to 23-year-olds. Now, this is a year following Hurricane Katrina after it savaged New Orleans.
Yeah.
And they were taking a poll of people and their prowess with geography. And they found out that 3 out of 10 could not find Louisiana on a map. 4 out of 10 could not find Mississippi. 6 out of 10 could not find Israel after decades of relations. And 7 out of 10 could not find Iraq after 3 years of war. And then as a bonus, 75% thought English was the world's most spoken language. Now, apparently nobody told these people that China is 1/5 of the world's population here. In 2008, there was a history poll taken of high school students. I mean, there's been a number of these polls taken, but this one in particular, 25% of the high school students polled didn't know Adolf Hitler was the Chancellor of Germany in World War II. 50%, only 50% knew, and this is how this is phrased. 50% knew that the American Civil War was fought between 1850 and 1900. Now, when I went to school, 1861, 1865 falls between 1850 and 1900. But the pièce de résistance of this particular study...
Oh, French. I love it when you talk French. Go ahead.
Was the fact that 25% thought Columbus reached the New World in 1750. So it doesn't leave a lot, you know, between 1492 and the French and Indian War in 1754 to get a lot done here. So, yeah, there's a problem here. We are not...
Wait. We all know that in 1493, Columbus sailed the deep blue sea. Oh, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. Close. At least close, though.
It rhymes.
Not too bad. At least close.
At least it rhymes.
What percentage of the people that were polled just claimed that they could see Russia from their front porch?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I'd say that qualifies her as an expert in foreign policy because you commanded a National Guard 50 miles. You know, I mean, you know, that's, you know.
I think that's indicative, endemic of the fact that it's not just, you know, we always talk about how every generation talks about how the generation after doesn't know anything. How could the schools be failing my kids, my grandkids? But, you know, we're talking about an adult here, an adult that represents probably a lot of American adults that really don't have a lot of knowledge about things that they really ought to know something about, other than who won the World Series last year or who won American Idol last week.
Right. Well, it's, you know, if you want to do something recent, I mean, go back to World War II. Now, I teach at Noah Community College. I teach the Ken Learner's Institute, and I do 2 World War II courses. I do the Turning Points of World War II, which I'm doing now. In the spring, I'll do the Great Patriotic War, which is the titanic clash between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union. I'm also going to be doing World War I in the spring. But on the Eastern Front, World War II is where the German army was defeated. You know, the German army was not beaten in North Africa, Sicily, Italy, or France. It was beaten in Russia. Now, if you want, I always get into I always start my class with statistics, and I'll say, okay, in 1941, the British population was approximately 47 million. Now, when the Second World War was over, Britain lost 495,000 dead. Now, that's 1.1% of their population.
Which is a lot.
It's a lot, but the good news here is that's 55% of what they lost in that ghastly horror of the trenches between 1914 and 1918. They lost almost 1 million people.
In the First World War.
France lost 1.5 million in the First World War. But the United States, now I move on to the United States here. Now, the United States in 1941 had a population of 132 million. Now, the generally accepted figure of American dead in World War II is 407,000. Now, taking the morality out of these statistics, that's like 1/3 of 1%.
Right.
Taking the morality out of these statistics, any general admiral would pay 407,000 dead for what the United States got out of the war. Because the United States made the jump from global power to superpower.
Right.
You know.
At the time, really, in fact, one of 2 countries in the world that was...
Correct. And it was untouched, you know, virtually untouched, the country itself. However, the Soviet Union in the Second World War in 1941 had a population of 191 million. However, between June 22nd, 1941, when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, to May 7, 1945, when the shooting stopped in Berlin, actually, the Russians lost upwards of 25 million. That's over 14% of the
That's
population.
about 15% of their entire population.
Correct. Fighting the Second World War.
Not just 15% of their fighting force, that's 15% of their entire population.
Correct. Well, when Hitler invaded the Soviet Union, he threw 139 divisions, 3.3 million men. That was three-quarters of the German army. And, you know, in 1942, the German army was 262 divisions. However, 200 of those divisions were on the Eastern Front.
Yeah.
And then when the Allies landed in France in 44 at Normandy, over 60% of the Wehrmacht was still in the Eastern Front. Now, the Germans were under no illusions. They knew where the war was.
And probably pretty beat up.
By that time of the war, yeah. Well, it's really a because by that time Hitler was, you know, was being given all those different hallucinogenic cocktails by that quack of a doctor of his, Theodore Morell. So it's really a tribute to the German soldier that the war lasted as long as it did. You know, they really were good soldiers. They really were. But, you know, it was just, they bit off more than they could chew. They did that in 2 world wars, you know. Apparently now they've learned their lesson, but...
So something about being in 2 wars at the same time, probably not being a very good idea for a country?
Well, the interesting thing is here is in World War I, yeah, Germany fought a 2-front war until the Bolsheviks took Russia out of the war in 1917.
Yeah.
And then Kerensky, the moderate, you know, tried to get the Russians back, but the Russian army was spent.
Yeah.
And, you know, and then in 1918, the Germans brought a lot of those troops onto the Western Front and launched their big offensive, hoping to beat the Allies before America really got a lot of manpower on the Western Front. But when Hitler wrote Mein Kampf in 24, he said it was a mistake to fight a 2-front war. However, in 1940, when he didn't beat the British at in the Battle of Britain, he was supposed to invade Britain. It was Operation Sea Lion. He canceled that because he wanted to invade the Soviet Union. Hitler more or less had to invade the Soviet Union. He had to. He wanted the oil and all the timber. I mean, the Ukraine is the breadbasket, all the wheat and cattle, so on and so forth. But he needed the oil in the Caucasus because the only real domestic supply of oil he had were the Ploesti oil wells in Romania, and that's not Germany.
Now, Germany, I guess, as I recall, their energy needs were pretty much met by coal, for the most part.
They were using, one of the methods was the Fischer-Tropsch process of converting coal into gas.
Yeah.
So that's how they ran. That's how they were able to fuel their tanks and their aircraft. The problem here is it wasn't as high an octane rating for the most part as gasoline America was making, because America had oil.
Yeah.
America was the melting pot.
Yeah, we had it well up the wazoo at that point.
Correct. But, you know, because actually the 2 biggest winners of the Second World War are the United States and the Soviet Union. And it's no surprise that both had indigenous oil supplies. But oil was the big commodity. You know, introduced in the First World War, oil is going to be the big commodity that's not only going to revolutionize war, but dominate it to the present day. You don't have oil, you're done. Yeah. It's that simple. I mean, why do you think we're in Iraq? Oil and defend the dollar. Yeah. It's not just to use this oil. We're there to have a commanding presence in the oil market because our dollar is tied to oil. It's the reserve currency.
Right.
Okay.
Now, as I understand it, one of the reasons, the subtexts for invading Iraq was something about Saddam Hussein wanted to tie Iranian oil to the euro rather than the dollar.
In 2000.
In 2000.
He was going to do that.
Yeah.
Correct. Now, yeah. You know, the dollar is still the world's reserve currency. How long is it going to last? Your guess is as good as mine. But one of the reasons it stays the reserve currency is because of the fact oil is priced in dollars. So if Thailand wants to buy oil from Saudi Arabia, they use the buck. If Swaziland wants to buy oil from Iran, they use the buck. So all these countries have to keep dollars in their central bank tills.
So they have to buy our dollars in order to buy oil.
However, that's a boon to us because of the fact it's our currency dictating the price of oil. Oil for us generally, and gasoline, is generally cheaper than in most places of the world. It's an advantage for the United States.
And that's been the case for many, many years, as I understand it. Because I know back when we were paying 50 cents a gallon for gasoline, Europe was in the $3–4 range.
That's correct. However, the thing is, some of those dollars find their way back here. You know, maybe these other countries want to buy our goods and services. Maybe they'll want to buy American bowls. Maybe they'll want to buy American glasses. Maybe they'll want to buy American tablecloths.
Yeah, made in America. Yeah, right. If you could spell America C-H-I-N-A.
But, you know, the other thing is, some of those dollars find their way back here and buy Treasury notes, certificates of deposit, Treasury bills. In other words, they finance their debt. So if the dollar is no longer going to be priced, if oil is no longer going to be priced in dollars, what's going to happen to this country? You know, the value of the dollar, you think it's dropping now? Forget it. Imports are going to go skyrocketing. How much is it going to cost you to buy this from China then? You know, then what's going to happen to Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid? So we're almost to the point we have to be in Iraq. We have to be in Afghanistan. I mean, if you look, if you take a map out, you go home, take a map out, put your finger on Saudi Arabia, then go to Iraq, Iran, Kuwait, then go north to the Caspian Sea, shove east, go across Tajikistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, so on and so forth. Then down Afghanistan, Pakistan. You know, then you can see geography. Hanson W. Baldwin, the great military writer, used to be for the New York Times years ago. He's since died. Great military historian, said geography is the arbiter of strategy. I mean,
say that again?
Geography is the arbiter of strategy.
Oh, arbiter.
Right. So if you have a handle on geography, you don't have to go to West Point, Annapolis, or Sandhurst to have an understanding of what's going on in the world. You don't need to listen to those beltway blowhards telling you why we're there if you have an understanding of geography. You know, we were told
which would include, I presume, natural resources.
You got it. That's this is the great game going on now. You know, it's an offshoot of what happened in World War I, World War II, the 19th century. The great game between Britain, Russia, and even France in Central Asia. It's the same thing going on now. The script is basically the same. The cast of characters has been altered a little bit here, but it's basically the same script. But, you know, I mean, we were told when we went into Iraq, what? That Saddam Hussein and Osama bin Laden were in collusion with each other. Bush admitted himself later on that wasn't the case, but the horse is already outside the barn door. Outside the barn.
Then we couldn't, well, we have to stay because we can't lose a war.
Of course.
For our national pride.
Of course. But, you know, I mean, and also weapons of mass destruction. Well, after 9 years of inspections and 7.5 years of troop army occupation, where are they? And
well, we know where they were. Nowhere.
Well, we
degraded.
Well, we and the Germans gave them a lot of chemical weapons to fight the Iranians in '82 and '83.
And they were all degraded by that point.
And Rumsfeld went there. Rumsfeld is the one that said, well, this isn't about oil, it just plain isn't. I remember the exact words. You know, and then also, then the other hot one was, well, we're there to bring them democracy. The British said that in 1920. Democracy to a lot of these people is a dirty word. You know, it's ridiculous what they... I'll give you 7 good reasons, 7 reasons. Why we're in Middle East and Central Asia.
Okay, go ahead.
Oil, natural gas, gold, silver, diamonds, uranium, and tungsten.
Tungsten?
Right.
We don't hear about too much.
Well, tungsten is a good metal for warheads because it allows you to shoot through armor. The Germans found that out in World War II.
Armor piercing.
Correct.
Okay.
So that's what they use, like in any tank rounds, on a tank for shooting at another tank, so on and so forth. But there's 7 good reasons why we're there. So, you know, all this malarkey about, you know, but again, if you don't know your history, you're left in a lurch, because when it comes to Iraq, you know, go up to, I've done this, that's why I put that in this book. Go up to somebody and say, you know, Iraq is less than half as old as the United States, and they suddenly look at you with TV test patterns for eyeballs. You know, they think, you know, they're going back to 2500 BC, 3000 BC. No. Iraq as a modern nation is less than 100 years old. The British and the French forged the borders in 1916.
They shoehorned it together from, what, four different separate, very diverse areas.
Well, it was all part of the Ottoman Empire. You know, they did this deal in expectation of the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, which it did. It was the sick man of Europe, one of the monarchies that fell apart. So that's what happened here. And why did the British do that? Well, oil is one reason. They were already pumping the oil out of Persia, which we now call Iran, which is next door. So common sense told them that there's oil here, and they were right. There was. So a lot of it is resource-based. We seem to forget that here. And Americans are under the impression that their kids don't die for oil. Well, where have you been the last century? It was World War I, World War II, you know, Persian Gulf War. We didn't want Saddam, you know, doubling the size of his oil reserves and then trying to call the price, OPEC oil, just so he can pay off his debt from the Iran-Iraq war, which was $100 billion.
I'm going to plant the seed now, but we're probably not going to get to that until the second show that we were going to do. But the question is, historically speaking, is America today similar to 1930s Germany? Don't get there yet.
First, I want to talk about comparing constitutionally, comparing America now and some of the things we've gone through or we're going through in recent years to, we talked a little bit about this before we came on the air.
Right.
America in the 1920s. Draw me some comparisons.
Well, America, 2010 to America 1920, there are some definite comparisons here. You had the attack on 9/11,
Yeah.
Which most people would say is closer to akin to Pearl Harbor, so that makes America 1941.
Yeah.
But going back 1920, sure, we were coming out of the First World War,
Yeah.
but don't forget, America ostracized itself from the settlement in Europe because we had been through we were in the First World War long, but Americans didn't want to a lot of Americans didn't want to get involved in this. So after the First World War, isolation became a big word here. We went here once, we don't want to go back, let Europe solve their own problems. Part of that was the rich and the money class. I mean, to them, the victory meant getting back to business, and business was pursuing the almighty dollar. However, there was also the crackdown on the unions. What's happening today? Union membership and unions. I mean, all right, you had the Supreme Court pass that United for America, United We Stand, that ruling that gives the corporations
Essentially personhood.
Exactly. And also unions. Well, what good is it for the unions when they're going down the tubes here? That's essentially what's happening here. So that, plus you go back 1920, the crackdown on the unions by Woodrow Wilson, Attorney General Palmer.
Bloody situations.
Right. Socialists being arrested, so-called, the Red Scare, the people being deported back to Hungary, the Soviet Union, so on and so forth. So yeah, there are definite parallels here. The Sedition Act, 1918, where you crack down, you can't, they try to restrict your speech. They tried that in 1798, too.
Okay, now the Sedition Act, anything comparable to the Patriot Act?
Sure it is. Sure. I mean, they renewed the Patriot Act. This is a scary thing here. Of course, you could probably make a better historical parallel with going back Nazi Germany after the Reichstag fire.
Yeah.
And then Hitler passed the Enabling Act.
Yeah.
Which suspended civil liberties, so on and so forth. We have 9/11, and yet what happens then? They passed the Patriot Act. So yeah, our rights are being compromised. It's not Al Qaeda that's the enemy. We have met the enemy, and the enemy is us.
Well, that sounds like something out of Pogo, I think.
Yes, well, but it's true to life.
Yeah,
it's true to life.
Now you mentioned the unions, and it looks like, coming out of the 2010 elections, that one entire political party has declared war on unions. And probably a lot of corporate Democrats are going to go along with them on that. Seems to be a lot of... for the life of me, I can't figure out, and maybe somebody can enlighten me about what is wrong with people organizing to get better pay, to get health care for their employees and their families,
right,
to keep their employees as part of the middle class. Not really quite sure what's wrong with that, but apparently, as I mentioned, one entire political party and a lot of corporate Democrats going along with them have pretty much declared war on American unions again. Well, this battle's been going on for a long time, but it seems to be heading into a much more heated phase.
I would agree with you here. One thing we have to keep in mind here, after September 2nd, 45, VJ Day, America was a country, as I said before, that went from being a global power to a superpower.
Yeah.
Now, keep in mind, this is a country that had, we were virtually untouched from the war.
Yeah.
Domestically, we were virtually untouched. This was a country that had more food that it could eat, more clothes that it could wear, more gas that it could burn, and more money that it could spend. all this money. I mean, there were people, and this was unheard of. I mean, back in the 20s, if you were making, $20, $30 a week, wow, this is good money. World War II, people in the war plants are making $300, $400 a week. Well, when you gear your economy to fight a war, and you have wage and price controls on, people can only spend so much of that money. Now, back then, what did they do with it? They banked it.
And you save it, yeah.
Correct. However, when the war was over, that backlog of cash, the country was awash in money.
People had to do something with it, so
well,
I guess
they did.
I guess they spent
did. The
it.
Marshall Plan is part of that. We never did have the depression after World War II we had after the Second World War. The thing is, all that money
after the First World War.
Right, after the First World War. It financed, that money financed the biggest post-war boom there ever was. Problem is,
and we were part of that, weren't we, as little kids?
Correct. And the important thing to keep in mind is, for a long time to come, America was the only game in town. Televisions came from here, radios came from cars. Oh, we were Auto Central. Everything came from here. Now, to expect that to have lasted indefinitely is short-sighted and ludicrous. Now, it seems that we got China coming up. We got India coming up. These are post-colonial countries that are now beginning to enjoy the fruits of progress. Finally, after all these years, after post-colonialism, they're able now to enjoy these fruits of progress, and we don't seem to know how to handle that. We seem to have a problem. We don't seem to know how to handle that. So now, instead of using our economic and political power, which is on the wane, we're resorting to maybe they want to call it the last card, the military.
Okay, I'm going to make a quick shout out to the control room. I missed that hand count. How many minutes? Thanks.
Okay, we're going to wrap it up right there. We're going to come back and do a second show and talk about a lot of these and many other things historically, and sort of get our audience hopefully back on track as far as being fascinated by history and wanting to learn more about where we've been in order to understand better where we're coming from. This is Progressive Soup. I'm David Stevenson. This is not Marv Alpert.
Right.
But at any rate, we'll be back to the miracle of modern television. We'll be back again in a couple of minutes. Thanks.